My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of The Different Podcast, I talk with Steve Chalke about how God can get hijacked for violence and war. We end up exploring how sacred texts can be so easily misinterpreted, and we discuss how important it is for anyone who reads and references them to interrogate them and do the hard work of understanding. And we uncover how when we understand the books of the Bible this way, you can't help but get to the way of love. We go deep in this episode. We needed to. This stuff really matters. We hope it helps you go deeper too. And we're back, Steve.
We're back. It's like we've never been away. Always here. Always returning to the same place.
I know. And the joy of the space that we do this recording in, we happen to be surrounded. I've just noticed what's over your left shoulder.
Oh, yeah, some angel wings.
Some angel wings.
Yeah. So we should say this is an Oasis school drama studio.
Drama studio.
So it's got great acoustics.
And black walls, and it makes us feel like we are.
And it's got all this draping, which takes away any echo. And it happens to have some angel wings in today. And some more over there, actually.
Oh, well, we're made
but
up
not as
for
fluffy.
later then.
Yeah, so
very good.
There must be good things going on here. Yeah.
Steve, it is great to see you yet again. And I even remember this when I was teaching, which is like a million years ago, teaching about this, how throughout history, people have invoked God to be in war with them.
Well, and now that's why you're saying it.
And that's why I'm saying it. And it's exactly the same now.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels ugly and it feels off.
It's a crack record, isn't it? It just goes round and round.
Yeah. And then what people seem to do is they seem to pull out parts of the Bible or verses from particular passages in the Bible. And then, and then we land in the book of Revelation and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so messed up.
Yeah, God hates people,
God hates people, God kills people, God likes these people more than those people. And you can use a Bible verse to back up everything.
Well, and there's a great story that is reliably told. I've read it in several accounts. Winston Churchill, of course, was the Prime Minister through the Second World War. And his son, Randolph, was fighting in the Second World War in the former Yugoslavia. And he'd been in several campaigns, but he found himself and his troop, they were holed up in a cave, and they were cornered. There was no, they were safe, but there was no way out. They couldn't get home, so they just had to wait for help. And Randolph Churchill was an avid reader, and there was nothing to read. But there was another guy in his troop who had a Bible, and Randolph Churchill had never read the Bible. But there was nothing else to read. And so he asked whether he could have it.
Yeah.
And he started reading it, as you would any book, from the front. You don't start at the back, do you? So he started reading from the front, working his way through to the back. And he read I don't think he ever finished it, but he read a lot of it over the coming weeks before they found a way out. And when asked about his reading of the Bible and his belief in the Bible, later on, he recounted that story. In fact, I think he often recounted it. And he was asked what he'd learned from reading the Bible in that cave. And he said, what I learned is that God is a shit. And some people might be offended by that, but that's what he said. It's what he thought. And the truth is, lots of people think that because they read texts of the Bible about genocide and about slavery and misogyny, etc., 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 all the way through all these things that happen. And they say, so God's like that. Therefore, in the name of God, we can promote war. We can kill our enemies.
Yeah.
We can wipe people out. God told the people of Israel to wipe out their enemies, all of them, women, children, men, animals, and even got angry with them when they spared some of the animals.
Yeah.
So that is clearly in line with the God of the Bible. So let's go wipe out our enemy because we are righteous and they're not.
So reading the Bible that way is not the way to read.
No, but it's been a hugely popular way. So, of course, slavery.
Yeah.
You know, the British Empire built on slavery.
Yeah.
Backed by the bishops, backed by the church, because this isn't just what Christians call the Old Testament, the first 3/4 of the Bible, but the New Testament as well. There's never a ringing endorsement of an anti-slavery campaign. The writers accept that slavery is the thing, and their best judgment is be a good slave owner and be a kind one.
Yeah.
You know, give your slaves food.
Yeah.
You know, and be a good slave, obey your slave
masters,
master. So if that's the last word on love or equality or inclusion,
we're in trouble.
We're all in trouble. And you don't find the last word on slavery in the Bible in that sense. So that's why, one of the reasons why so many people get put off the Bible. It's why one of the reasons why so many people, as you said, can take any Bible verse or many Bible verses and use them to facilitate whatever they already decided they wanted to do for their own ends in the first place.
Yeah. So, Steve, how should we, because really it is, all of this stuff is how do you actually handle and read text like
an ancient text like the Bible,
which is, as you've said many times and is blatantly obvious, the Bible is a collection of books. Yeah, it's of all different genres.
Well, the term Bible, of course, means library. It doesn't mean book.
Yeah.
And even if you miss that, if you open the front page, it says the books of the Bible are, and it lists them all. You know, so it's a library. It's just been condensed by the printers to look like one book. And then you get the people who say, well, the Bible is without error and there's no contradictions in it and it's infallible, etc., etc. And I always think, have you read it? Like, have you? So these different books take different opinions and different sides. They're written by different people with different personalities and characteristics in different social and political situations in different countries at different times in different languages. So they have different views and opinions. And all you've actually got to do is try to read one book after the other, and you'll see that these things emerge. But people somehow feel they've got to defend the integrity of the Bible as a novel, as a book, chapter 1 and chapter 23 to all match up, because people have forgotten that the Bible is a library. And indeed, before the printing press, it always was just a set of scrolls.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because there's a load of things that aren't even in there.
Yeah. So, famous Christians, Francis of Assisi, St. Francis, or Benedict, or, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of Bible did they have? Well, actually, what they had was a load of scrolls, the ones they could afford. The scrolls were very expensive. Some of them we'd be familiar with in our Bibles today, and some of them we wouldn't, because they haven't appeared there. But some of the books we've got, they longed to have a copy of this manuscript but never could afford it and didn't get it. And what order did all this come in? Well, just the order that was on their table or on their shelf or wherever, wherever they kept them under their bed or whatever. They were just big scrolls. So,
and then because of the printing press, which it all got landed in. Yeah,
the printing press wasn't invented till the 1400s. So the whole first millennium and a bit of Christianity was done with scrolls. And of course, most people couldn't read anyway, so they had to have the scroll read to them by somebody who could read. So that's how it was. But then after the printing press, it was still too expensive to print books. Books didn't become popular until Victorian times, actually, which is why you can never find a decent book in a second-hand bookshop that you can take straight down the Antiques Roadshow and get, oh, this book's worth £100,000. Oh, I never knew. My mum bought it for a shilling, or something like that. And that doesn't happen very often because if you look in any old bookshop, the vast majority of books are Victorian and not earlier, because that's when the new media of the printing press became cheap enough to be popular.
Mass-produced.
Mass-produced. And as the printing press became popular, and people were more literate and could read anyway, basically, I mean, this never happened quite like this, but who decided which books were finally in the Bible and which order they went in? It was the printer. In the sense that the printer had to ring up the bishop. I'm making that up. The guys printing the thing had to ring up the guys who had all these scrolls and said, well, which ones do you want in and which order shall I put them in? And then they worked that out. And it's interesting, actually. There are different Bibles around the world, and the books occur in slightly different orders, and some Bibles have more books in than others.
So, Steve, on this, invoking God for war, is God into genocide? How do you interrogate? Because I think that's the key, isn't it? Like when we are, I know for us, when we are preparing to talk about something in a church setting or whatever, and just even understand any of this stuff, the first thing is to really interrogate what that piece of writing is about. Like, there's a million questions you have to ask rather than just going, well, it says these words.
Yeah. So it's to remember, actually, it wasn't written to you.
Yeah.
This was written in the 1st century.
Yeah.
Or it was written before the 1st century. It was written to a completely different kind of audience in a completely different kind of society that was undoubtedly agrarian. Iron Age, Bronze Age, etc. And what was going on in their lives and in their culture, and what did this mean for them? Because it was written to them. And until you can understand that first question about context, you can't then say, well, in what sense would what was written to those people in that situation, in what sense would it be applicable to me or us in our completely different situation? And there are always great principles to pull out, but you've got to dig for the principles. The way they always say it is a text, any text, not just a Bible text, without a context is always a pretext for anything you want to say. You see it in politics today. A newspaper will yank a politician's or a leader's or sometimes a footballer's words or whatever completely out of context, publish one sentence or half a sentence, and the people are going, that's not all what I meant. They've just lopped off the front, lopped off the end, and made my words seem to fit their agenda.
Clickbait.
Yeah, it happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, what we don't realise is that you can do that to the Bible and do it to the Bible all the time. Yeah. So you can lift words out of their context, out of their original meaning, or their original time, and we get to that, and then you can reach any conclusion you like. And it's not just the Bible, it happens with Shakespeare, of course. Yeah. So you can't read Shakespeare, can you? I mean, people say, oh, yes, I can. But what I mean is you have to study it.
Yeah.
You've really got to study it. And it was only written 400 and something years ago, so, and written in English. But what we're attempting to do is understand books that have been put into the Bible that were written 2,000 years ago and not in English, written in Greek or written in Hebrew. Yeah. And we're trying to interpret what they mean on the bus whilst we're driving home. You've got to study this thing, not read a few verses and jump to a conclusion. And that's what can become harmful.
So shifting from a literal view to really grappling with
it. And to understand that each of the books that fill this library were written by, as I've said, different people with different outlooks and different politics at different times in history in different languages over a course of about 1,500 years, actually, from the earliest books to the latest books. So their opinions change and develop. And you talked about the Bronze Age. Moses, who's famous in the Bible. In fact, the first 5 books of the Bible get called the books of Moses. Not that he wrote them, because he dies towards the end of the 5th one, and that doesn't seem to put him off writing. So he's being written about, and the books are named in his honour.
Now you've dispelled a massive rumour.
Yeah, they've been named in his honour. But the interesting thing is that Moses lived in the Middle Bronze Age.
Yeah,
so he says, look, when it comes to justice, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a bone for a bone, and a life for a life.
Yeah.
So that's capital punishment, Let the punishment fit the crime. Whereas much later on...
Which, can I just say, that at that point would have been a revolution, right?
Yes,
because before that, it was a free-for-all.
Yes. It was a free-for-all before that. In fact, when Moses said an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, he wasn't being original at all. There was a king who he knew, but never met him. He lived 500 years before him, called Hammurabi, who was king of the Babylonian Empire, massive superpower of the day, who they're the first known laws that we have. You can go see them written on a giant stone in the Louvre Gallery, in the Louvre Museum in Paris. It's this huge stone. Moses had the 10 Commandments written on stone, and we go, I doubt it.
People do
but you can go to the Louvre and actually see the stone that Hammurabi
did the same.
Well, I'm sure he got his servants to do it. But there's loads of laws of the Babylonian Empire 500 years before Moses, and one of them is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a bone for a bone. But to your point, the difference is Hammurabi says that's in the case of when you take a citizen's eye or a citizen's tooth or a citizen's life. It's retribution, and it's let the punishment fit the crime. It's equal. But then he kind of does derivatives. He says, but if you take the eye of a freeman or the bone of a freeman or bruise a freeman, then you pay a fine. Yeah. But it's a big fine because a freeman was someone who'd been a slave and is now a citizen, a free person. So they're valuable, but not as valuable as a native citizen of the empire. But then if you take the eye of a slave or bruise a slave, well, just a piddling little fine.
They don't matter.
No, they don't matter. So there's that 3-tier system built into Hammurabi's law. And Moses, 500 years later, repeats it. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a bone for a bone. And everybody's going, Moses, we know all this, Now get on to the derivatives, what the
subsets.
The subsets, for a freeman or a slave. And Moses just stops.
It's a full stop.
It's a full stop. End of paragraph, end of story. And slowly they wake up to...
It's a revolution.
It's a revolution because Moses says equality.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're the king or a pauper, a slave or a freeman or a citizen. The deal's the same. Yeah. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But it's still about retribution, though measured.
Yeah. But it's shifted.
Not excessive. Yeah. It's not excessive. You can't just, he punched me, so I'm going to stab him.
Yeah.
It's controlled, but it's also about equality, but it's still about retribution. Yeah. But then Jesus comes along in another one of the books that's made up the Bible, and he's recorded as saying, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. Why did he say you've heard it said instead of you've seen it written? Because people... They had it read to them, or told to them because they couldn't write, and read. So he said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I'm telling you, no. I'm telling you, love
your enemies.
Love your enemies. There's a new law in town. The law of retribution is dead as a dodo. Yeah. Now it's about forgiveness. Yeah. And restoration. That's what it's about now. So in that, I probably spent a lot of time talking about it, but can you see how
Yeah,
the books are saying
absolutely.
different things at different times in history, and there's a progression.
There's progressive revelation. Yeah.
And you see, to use that word, revelation, as it really is, in the attitude of Jesus, which is about restoration, forgiveness, hope, love your enemy, rather than retribution, punishment.
Yeah.
It's not penal anymore. It's a system filled with new beginnings.
Yeah. So what we do when we see a text that seems to be saying something which is about violence and aggression and misogyny and enslavement, and what we have to do is go to the lens of Jesus.
Yeah, because these books were written by people who understood the world that way. And then people will say, but aren't all the biblical textbooks inspired by God? It says they're inspired, and they've been included through the years. These are the books that people valued through the centuries and eventually asked to be put into the book by the printer. Yeah. So each of these books is a shift on, a move on. They are inspired. They're led that way. I've written a lot of books, and I hope that my thinking has been inspired by God. But when I read the ones I wrote 25 years ago, I think, they weren't that inspired. But, do you see what I mean?
But we know less, and that's the point,
and
right?
our thinking develops. And of course, if I get to live another 5 years or 10 years and never write about what I've learned, I hope I would have got further.
Yeah.
So, and this isn't just something that happened historically with people, putting the words for war into God's mouth. Instead of saying, we want to go beat them up, they say, God's told us to go beat them up. We still do the same. You get bishops blessing battleships, don't you? But it's not just that kind of thing. It's that I was talking to some people the other week, and I said, when I was about 25, I think 25, 24, somebody gave me a car. It was a Triumph Herald.
They were great, weren't they?
They were great, and if I'd have kept it and done it up,
it would have been even greater.
They were great cars. They looked fantastic. But mine didn't look fantastic and wasn't great, and it was the only given to me because it was falling apart. And the truth of the matter is that besides any of the other faults that it had, it passed its MOT, but besides any other faults it had, it used to burn petrol and oil in pretty well equal measure. Every time you filled up with a gallon of petrol.
Fill up with oil.
A gallon of oil.
One of those.
Literally, you drive down the road with all this smoke coming out the back. But it's my first car. And I used to think, oh, thank you, God, that person was so kind to give me this. I feel like this is your gift to me, whereas now, no one's going to boast that God gave them a petrol guzzling, oil drinking, smoke inducing, air quality raising car to drive around. But back then, I truly believe
in the name of Jesus,
it was an answer to prayer that somebody gave me a car. Yeah. So we all do it.
Yeah.
So these books, each book in the library of the Bible, they are, if you study deeper, they're moving the narrative forward, but they still represent the high point of human understanding and thinking in their age.
Yeah.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You're not allowed to take their life for a tooth.
Yeah.
Limit it.
Yeah.
But Jesus gets further.
Which means that God isn't into killing, then.
God
is not into killing.
God, of course, is love. That's the greatest revelation of the Bible. And by the way, in terms of where it comes in the books, was this a really ancient one, or is this a late one? The term, the little phrase, God is love, comes almost at the end of the Bible. It's in one of the books, which is called 1 John, near to the end of the Bible. And it's like it's taken all this time, and finally someone gets it, and they say, do you know, I've got a feeling God is love. This is written by an old man after all this history. The penny finally drops. And the penny finally drops on us slowly, doesn't it? In our youth, we can be perhaps more aggressive and more demanding. And you slowly come to the place where you realise God is love. I got a friend who was an abbot of a monastery, Benedictine. His name's Christopher. And he says, you can always tell a young monk from an older one, a wiser one. And I remember asking him why, and he said, well, it's simple. He said, a monk develops a rule of life, which means the principles by which they're going to live. It doesn't mean a rule as in, rules and regs. It means a measure of life. But he said, you can always tell a novice monk, because when you read their rule of life, which you change over time, it's things like get up at 4:30, have a cold shower, and kneel down in the snow. No, I'm exaggerated there. Kneel down, pray for an hour for others. Rise, do some gardening, do some work, go to the study, reflect, have a bite of breakfast, return to prayer, all this kind of stuff. And he said, and when you read the rule of somebody who's older, it's get up at 8, have a coffee, sit, reflect, ponder, thank God for life. See someone else, serve them a coffee. Now, I'm making that up, but it's that. So Christopher told me that the older you get, the more you learn that God is love and God is generous, and you learn both to live in that generosity yourself and extend it to everyone else.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jill.